Elizabeth Sparkle was once adored by many people during her prime. Her radiant beauty and graceful appearance were admired by countless fans. However, as time passed, she found herself working at a television channel that aired fitness programs. People began to forget her, especially when Harvey, the company's CEO, suggested that her manager find someone younger and more captivating. In a meeting, Harvey hinted that they would have to let Elizabeth go for the sake of the company's progress. All advertisements featuring her were taken down, upsetting her so much that she could not concentrate while driving, resulting in an unfortunate incident on the road. Fortunately, she did not suffer any serious injuries and was allowed to go home. Later, a nurse examined her spine and mentioned that Elizabeth was a good candidate, then handed her a yellow robe. Shortly after, Elizabeth discovered a flash drive inside that jacket. Not long after that, Elizabeth played the flash drive and watched a video, introducing a mysterious substance that could separate one's physical cells and release another version of oneself, fresher, more youthful, more appealing, and flawless. The only condition was that this new self would still share the same consciousness. For 1 week, the original body would be used. For the next, the new body would take over. Despite her initial skepticism about what she saw in the video, Elizabeth could not stop thinking about her past glory. Not wanting to give up on her career, she decided to revisit the flash drive containing the information. She contacted the number shown on the screen and asked to purchase the substance. The person on the phone asked for her home address and then gave her another address where she could pick up the product. The next day, she received a small card labeled 503. Elizabeth went to the designated location, which looked deserted. Inside, she found 2 lockers, one labeled with her number and another assigned to someone else. From her locker, she took out a package containing an activator substance, a stabilizer, a switcher tool to alternate between bodies, plus matrix food and nutrition for the other body. The instructions were clear. The activator should be used only once. The stabilizer must be administered daily, and the switcher must be used every 7 days without fail. Most importantly, there was a reminder that she was still one person, just in 2 forms. That night in her bathroom, Elizabeth injected the activator into her arm. Moments later, a transformation began to occur in her body. Something emerged from her spine, and when she looked in the mirror, she saw a strikingly beautiful woman who seemed to be a version of herself. This new figure was breathtaking, while Elizabeth's original body appeared unconscious. The new being carefully closed the opening in Elizabeth's back. Afterward, she provided the original body with the matrix food that had been included in the package. The following day, the new Elizabeth, who called herself Sui, began feeling something unusual in her new form. She remembered that she needed the stabilizer daily, and that the stabilizer fluid was generated within the original body's spine. Sui quickly retrieved and injected the stabilizer into herself, noticing that her body felt increasingly energetic. She then recalled that Harvey was looking for a replacement for Elizabeth Sparkle, so she decided to visit the studio and introduce herself under her new name. As soon as the company saw Sui's grace and charm, they immediately chose her to lead an exercise program designed to boost viewers for entertainment. Harvey was delighted, recognizing Sui as a highly valuable asset. Posters featuring Sui were soon placed all over the city. Every morning she started her day by taking the stabilizer. She led a fitness routine with her colleagues, and the audience response was overwhelmingly positive. However, the matrix food supplies began to run low, which meant it was time for Sui to switch bodies with the original Elizabeth. The process of switching was relatively simple. She just had to connect 2 small tubes to exchange blood between her new form and her original form. In her original body, Elizabeth felt weak and uncomfortable. Her life had become monotonous, consisting mostly of eating and watching television. A few days later, Elizabeth was notified that her package had been replenished. The contents included more food and additional stabilizer. After a week passed, it was Sui's turn again. She found Elizabeth's body lying in the bathroom. Wishing for some privacy, Sui built a hidden compartment in that room to keep the original body out of sight. Then she went back to her busy life, enjoying a rejuvenated sense of youth.
And in the meantime?
Over time, Sui began to act recklessly. Although it was time to switch bodies again, she decided to go out with her friends first. Meanwhile, the original Elizabeth's food supplies were nearly depleted. Sui, however, continued to enjoy her outings with a new partner. Despite warnings about the importance of switching on schedule, she ignored them and took more stabilizer from Elizabeth's body, extending her time outside. When Sui eventually did switch back, Elizabeth found her apartment in chaos. It shocked her to see that one of her index fingers appeared to have lost its vitality. She immediately contacted the same person from before, asking how to restore her damaged body, which had suffered from Sui's negligence. Unfortunately, there was no solution. The damage done could not be reversed. Furious with Sui, Elizabeth grudgingly cleaned the apartment, all while resenting the sight of Sui on TV. Every 2 weeks, Elizabeth's supplies were restocked. She also felt like someone was following her. One day at a quiet cafe, she encountered a gentleman who seemed familiar. He revealed himself as a nurse she had met at the hospital, and he too was using the same substance. He confessed that he had followed her because he understood her feelings of isolation. He knew that the presence of this second self could bring about the realization that they still had value, that they mattered to people. The man gently asked if Elizabeth's other self had started to cause harm. Elizabeth simply left the cafe, knowing deep down that his words reflected her true loneliness. Wanting some comfort, Elizabeth remembered Fred, a friend from junior high school who seemed to admire her. She still had his phone number, so she asked Fred out on a date. He was pleasantly surprised that Elizabeth reciprocated his interest. That evening, Elizabeth dressed in what she felt was her most suitable outfit. She wanted to look her best in front of Fred, yet she became anxious about her appearance and changed clothes and makeup multiple times, feeling distressed by her aging features and how they could not match Sui's radiance. In the end, Elizabeth canceled the date, burdened by her own thoughts. The next day upon switching, Sui was annoyed by how messily Elizabeth had been eating, and Sui also had to tidy up the apartment. Sui complained about Elizabeth's behavior to the person providing the substance, only to be reminded again that they were one individual, not two separate entities. Back at the studio, Harvey informed Sui that the morning fitness show had gained tremendous ratings since she joined, so he offered her the role of host for a special New Year's Eve performance. This show required substantial preparation, meaning Sui would have to be present for daily rehearsals. She kept delaying the switching process and continued drawing stabilizer from Elizabeth's body without the scheduled exchange. When all preparations for the New Year's Eve event were finished, Elizabeth's original body had become frail. She looked extremely tired, and she was furious at Sui for taking more time than agreed. Elizabeth contacted the supplier again, reporting that Sui was disregarding their arrangement. If Elizabeth chose not to continue, the supplier offered a way to halt the program. However, her body would not revert to its original state because everything that had been transferred could never be retrieved. Seeing her now weakened physical self, Elizabeth wavered between wanting to stop entirely and wanting to keep going, even though her condition was rapidly deteriorating. Feeling resentful, she wished she could let out her frustrations on Sui. Consumed by anger, Elizabeth deliberately cooked a massive amount of food, making the apartment messy. Her fury grew when she watched a rerun of Sui's interview, in which Sui openly stated that she was replacing Elizabeth Sparkle. Sui also commented that Elizabeth's style seemed outdated, like a fitness show from the distant past. These remarks drove Elizabeth beyond her limits. She threw everything into disarray, vowing never again to look at Sui's face. The following day, when it was time for the switch, Sui arrived and was outraged by the apartment's condition. Enraged, Sui decided not to give Elizabeth any more opportunities to share the body. She collected all the containers she could find and extracted every last drop of the stabilizer fluid from Elizabeth's spine. Months went by, and Sui prepared extensively for the New Year's Eve special. The event was scheduled for tomorrow night at 9 p.m. That night, Sui was with a new companion at the apartment. She wanted to administer the stabilizer, but upon attempting to switch, she discovered that Elizabeth's body no longer had any remaining fluid, only residue. Sui began to feel unstable. Desperate, she called the supplier to say that her stabilizer was gone. She was informed that her only option was to switch bodies so that the fluid could regenerate. Sui was extremely reluctant, especially given that the big event was the following night. Nevertheless, with no alternatives, Sui was forced to switch with Elizabeth. Elizabeth's body was now severely depleted, appearing alarmingly pale. Hearing Sui in distress, Sui's companion walked over, and Elizabeth, in her frustration, firmly asked this person to leave. Startled by the change, the companion hurried out. Elizabeth, overcome with emotion, called the supplier and insisted she truly wanted to quit the program this time. Early the next morning, Elizabeth returned to the usual place to retrieve a special termination kit. She dragged Sui's body into the living room. The kit contained a dark substance intended to bring an end to the second form. Initially, Elizabeth hesitated. After injecting the substance, she considered how she had almost regained her former success through Sui's body, an opportunity she had not experienced in so long. She momentarily thought about abandoning her plan, but it was too late. The substance had already entered Sui's system. Elizabeth quickly attempted to switch bodies so they could both survive together. To her shock, Sui and Elizabeth suddenly became conscious at the same time. Their awareness was no longer divided. Seeing that Elizabeth intended to terminate the program, Sui became upset and, in a moment of intense emotion, confronted Elizabeth physically. Because Elizabeth was the original Matrix body, this altercation proved catastrophic for her. With sorrow in her heart, Elizabeth was unable to keep going. The significant New Year's Eve show was imminent, and Sui, feeling remorseful and uncertain, wondered how she would manage the event in her unstable state. Alarmed by her body's condition, Sui saw her hair thinning, her teeth weakening, and various parts of her form deteriorating. In desperation, she returned to the apartment and attempted to use the activator once more on herself, hoping it would create a better version again, despite the caution that the activator should only be used once. As soon as she injected it, her cells reacted in an unforeseen way. The figure emerging from her spine appeared unsettling, reflecting elements of both Sui and Elizabeth, almost fused into one form. Night fell, and the show was about to begin. The third entity put on its gown and used an image of Elizabeth's face as a sort of mask. It returned to the studio for the big event, where Harvey proudly planned to present this extraordinary new star to potential stakeholders. The show was broadcast live nationwide. The third entity tried to speak with a distinctive voice that hinted at its transformed state. At one point, its mask slipped off, revealing its true face underneath. The audience grew silent, stunned by what they witnessed. A sudden movement occurred, causing the third entity's body to be punctured, releasing a bright fluid that startled everyone in the studio, filling the space with alarm and confusion. Realizing that the situation was overwhelming, the third entity attempted to flee. There were shouts from various people, and the atmosphere escalated. Ultimately, the tension reached a climax when a powerful tool was employed to subdue it until it was no longer active. In the aftermath of this event, observers reflected on how life might have been different for Elizabeth, and the film ends. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe, because by subscribing you have supported me to make better videos. See you in the next video.